Members of the Bird Herd, ladies and gentlemen, America, we're so happy to have a very special guest, Spencer Strong. Spencer, let's give a couple of your accolades really quick before we just jump right in. So Spencer is a phenomenal sales rep, leader, LinkedIn influencer. He's climbed they're called the Argentine Himalayas. He's also been nicknamed as Penny, and we love him. Yeah. We're excited to learn from him. He's a great leader, and going to teach us a lot here on the pod today. Thanks for coming on.
Dude, excited to be here. Just excited to be here. It's a good day to be alive.
So just jumping in really quick, Spence, your sales story began back when we were selling for Romney Pest Control as a marketing company back in 2018 and 2019, correct?
Sounds right.
Yeah.
I think so.
So Spence has got a lot of good stories, but one of the cool things too about Spence is he's since accelerated his career into a commercial, first residential real estate, and then you jumped into commercial, and you've been in that space ever since. So excited to kind of chop it up on the pod, but just let's get back to like, what are some things that you learned in those early days, like some sales skills, strategies that like still affect your job today? I think a lot of times when kids come into this job, they're like, oh, I'm doing this to kind of like move on to something new. And I would love for people to get like a sense of like that. How has this job done that?
Yeah. I mean, it was definitely my first like legitimate sales role. And door to door, I mean, is a beast of its own. It's not like getting on the phones and like cold calling kind of, it's cold knocking, but just grit, man. Like if you want to go out and have success in door to door, like you just work hard. Like it's a numbers game. And I don't know, my stats, I probably some days I knocked 40 doors and closed 6 deals, but like it's just repetition, just getting in, day out. And I think that's a skill that, I mean, honestly, dude, this generation like concerns me that they don't know how to work hard, but just staying with something, right? And working towards, I mean, everyone probably puts a goal at the beginning of the summer too. It's like, okay, what do I actually need to do to hit this goal? Like if I don't show up 3 days a week, how am I going to get there? So I guess just the grit and that transition into the real estate significantly. I mean, I cold called in real estate day in, day out, just dozens of calls a day, and nothing paid off in that. I mean, bigger deals, but nothing paid off for months. So it's like, I think I take that back to my knocking days of like, you might go 40, 50, whatever, how many doors, and it's like 100 degrees outside, just sweating it out, but it'll come. It's just a numbers game.
Well, and what a great lesson to learn, especially that young. I think like a lot of people don't learn that till they get into that first corporate job or stuff like that, where it's like, holy cow, like I've got to really push it. And I just think it's a really great, like quick crash course to go and learn like, hey, you got to put forth your best effort if you want to see that dollar bill.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%. And we had a good time. I mean, it's not like it's all just freaking just grind, but like the payoff. And I think a lot of that satisfaction on the back end, right? You don't necessarily see it in the moment, but once you feel it, it's like, okay, like that was cool.
Well, you really do develop like amazing relationships while you're out selling. When I think back on like my mission or like sports teams, I would put summer sales up in that category of how close I got to like really high caliber people. Yeah. Who were some like, I guess what were some like people that you got close to? You're like, oh dude, like it was really, really cool to meet them, learn from them, or like kind of throughout the summer.
Yeah. I mean, dude, I feel like it's kind of the core from summer one, dude, the core four. It was like me, you, Ty, and Daisy, bro. I mean, McLean was like there, but like we all know that story, and it's okay. We're homies now. Like we're good.
we're gonna show him this clip.
But no, I mean, like I think the four of us, because we're buddies in high school, right? We played sports together, but then like the mission's kind of one of those times too, where like you take separate paths, people come back, you go to different schools, you're not interacting with each other all the time. And so like being out there, and like I know for me, that was my first summer out, and so like I relied a lot on you, and like your experience with that and ability to help me be successful with that. And like Ty and I kind of had each other stepping into it at the same time too. Like that I think was super valuable because we felt like we were on the same, same starting point. Mm-hmm. And I think both of us had similar mindsets, similar goals. And yeah, I think we saw that with our numbers. Like our numbers were always super similar, and day to day it was like a bit of a competition, but also like we were excited for each other, I think there's only a couple times when we bageled, but man, those days was just like, hey, it's okay. Like, hey, you can have one of mine.
Do you remember when Landon would buy people bagels if they bagel?
Bro, that guy.
That was horrible.
Year 2.
Dude, yeah, that was wrong. But one of the things I want to highlight that you reminded me as you were talking, when you went out the first summer, I remember like your first like day or two, like when we were out, it was crazy. Like I had to train you and Ty, but I remember knowing you were going to make it because I was on my scooter and I was like, hey, are you cool if I just go on my scooter? You're like, just go on your scooter as fast as you can. Let's get as many doors as possible, and I'll just keep up with you. And so we're scootering through this neighborhood, and Spence is like in a full-on sprint, just keeping up with me in the scooter. And I was on the scooter, and he's like, faster, go. And I was like, dude, this kid's got some motivation.
Dude, once you're sweating in Houston at 100 degrees, like what's a little more sweat, Well, yeah, but then that first day we got one together. And then I think you bounced across the street, and I don't know if they stuck or whatever, but I got 2 more.
Yeah.
That first day, and I was like, oh my gosh, like, okay. And then I think like maybe got 1 or 2 the next day, and then I think I bageled day 3, and I was like, oh man, was it a fluke? Like, oh no.
Well, and I actually remember that. I remember like you initially had a huge spike of success. Like I felt like you were doing really, like pretty good.
Yeah.
And, like I remember there was like a little valley that you went through, and then like obviously you became the man that you are and transitioned up. But like, talk to me about like where you were at. Like, I think a lot of times when kids go out, like they're expecting to be really, really quick, like trend up, or if things start to go wrong, they don't like bounce back. Talk to me like what kept you going, and how you were able to kind of like come out of that valley and be successful.
That's a good thought. 'Cause I think, man, anything in life, like, dude, nothing is perfectly upward trajectory. Like, and I'm sure, like, if everyone looks back in their life, like, they'll always say, okay, like, 2 steps forward, 1 step back, or like, there's always going to be moments that come down. And I think you just have to recognize, like, that's okay. But then beyond, like, that being kind of how it is, like, how do I fix it? Because then it was like, I just got thinking, I'm like, okay, is there like consistency with why I'm not closing these? Like, where am I getting lost? What are the objections? Like, trying to dial it in, because it is a science, right? There are things that you can do to overcome. And if it's the same wall you're running into, like, don't keep beating into the same wall, like figure it out. Like, how do I get around it? And that I think played a big part. But I look back and like being able to, at that point in my life, like, I think goes back, like, sports established a big foundation of like overcoming opposition. And the mission too, like the mission was really big. Like, you get no's all the time, or people that, tell you to go F off or whatever. I mean, doesn't quite hit as hard when it's in a different language, but like, it still hits you. Like, you're like, okay. But I don't know, like, and that's for me, I like to be able to problem solve. That's where it gets hard for me, is if I'm like, if I don't know what it is that my issue is. But being surrounded, in a team where there are more experienced guys, or there's someone who's willing to help you, that makes a huge difference too. Because you can take their success and experience and then just expedite the whole learning process for you. I know that's one thing that we talked about a lot. Like, when you first started, like, you felt like you were totally on your own, like figuring stuff out. And so, like, I didn't feel half of that, right? Because there were different, yourself, Daisy, others who were there that I could rely on and learn from pretty quickly to expedite that process. But I think it makes a big difference.
100%. And I think just being creative, I think that's one thing where a lot of people have a big problem. I think a lot of times they're like, oh, I need someone else to solve this, or like, I just need like the situation to change, when in reality, like, that's when you need to get like creative. That's when you need to start like pulling out the crayons and the paints and being like, how can I like make this canvas look how it needs to look?
Yeah.
So kind of in the beginning too, I remember like you quickly started like trend up, and you were one of the top producing guys like both those years when you came out with us. One of the things I thought you did really, really good was area prospecting. You were really, really good at understanding like where you needed to be, when you needed to be there. So good that one time I felt like I had to pick a bone with you. And you probably know this. One time I sent in a group chat. I was like, "Hey, everybody!" Like, and we were all selling pretty well as a team that day. And I was like, "Dude, killing it on the doors." You were outselling me. You were at like 8 or 9 sales at the time. I think I had like 6 or 7, and like a lot of the guys were like 4, 3, 5, like kind of out throughout. And I was like, "Everyone send a picture. Like, let's go hard till like 9:30." And then you sent a picture in, and I sent this text at like 8. It was like, and then you're like working hard on these doors, Das. And then you sent me a picture of the temple, and I was dying, and I was pissed too because I'm like, he's outselling me today, and he's just like vibing right there. But like, what I'm getting by that, you always were really, really good at putting yourself in the best situation throughout the summer, like area wise, car wise. Kind of talk to like where some of the things you learned along the way, like, oh, okay, like maybe I should only bring out one person in my car, or maybe I should like look for these kind of areas to like put myself in, so that way I can only have to knock less doors, but have a greater amount of sales.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I do definitely. That was something that, yeah, I felt like was up my alley. And I mean, there were a couple times there were 3 of us in a car, but I think you're doing yourself a disservice having that, because you lose so much time on the door. And it's easy when you're out there. And I mean, I fell victim to this too. Like, it's easy when you're out there to like look forward to that time, because you're like, oh, like less time on the doors. Like, it's hot, I don't want to get back out there. It's evening, whatever, right? It's hard work, but it's such a disservice if you're, it's if you and one other guy, there's some competition there. He's going to, be out on the doors maybe a couple minutes before you. And if you're similar in caliber, like, dude, it keeps you motivated really strong. But for me, I always like to look at my area beforehand and know kind of my whole area. And if I was in a piece of it, and granted, the scooter is like, we ended up getting the 9 bots, and I know everyone now gets Segways and stuff, which makes a huge difference. You can cover way more ground. So, I mean, I'd for sure recommend getting one of those without a doubt.
We were like cyborgs.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
I just loved it till it rained, and we're like, oh, frick. Like, just leave it under a tree.
Protect my investment.
I'll come back. But no, I think like understanding the area. And if I would go 6, 8, 10 doors and like just get pounded in the face, like I would just jump over to like another side of my area. I'm like, okay, like kind of restart, like let's get back into it, and I was super strategic on, those morning hours. I'm only hitting doors with cars or garages open or signs of life. Like, I'm not wasting, because to me there's number of doors, but there's also like number of good doors. And that's a stat, like you could hit 200 doors, but if you're hitting bad doors, like you're just wasting time. And especially when we would get out in those neighborhoods where their homes are further apart, they're bigger lots, they're longer driveways, like you're not, from doorstep to doorstep in 5 seconds. You could lose a lot of time just, up and down driveways. So for me, I was always like, if there's not a sign of life, especially those early afternoon, morning hours, like I'll just come back in the evening. And evening, I was more diligent to hit, pretty much every door. Yeah. But I was just like, how can I work more efficiently to give myself the best opportunities?
If you're watching, I need you to clip that, like pause it, reel it back 25 seconds, and watch it like 2 more times, because that was really, really good. Understanding like reading the area is just, it's so big. I mean, obviously, since you sold and even during those summers, you've read a lot. Like, you've uploaded your literature. I see you posting on LinkedIn all the time. If you had to give like a couple good like general sales books that you're like, these really helped me take my game to the next level, what's some reads you push out to everybody?
That's a good question. It might not be directly like a sales book, but I think it has direct implications. I love the book. It's called The Go-Giver. Like, just such a quality book, and it changes your mindset, which I think, changing your mindset to what can I offer instead of like, what am I getting? People see that, right? And if I'm right, I put myself in the homeowner's shoes now, because I get guys coming and knocking on my door all the time. And I probably don't, I don't buy something if I don't need it, but I'm like, give me a quick spiel, like let me hear it and see. But the go-giver is just like, dude, what can I offer, right? And when I'm offering, people read that and they're just like, oh, okay, like he wants to help, he has good intentions, he's not just here for a number or to get my credit card, whatever. And I think it goes a long way. So the go-giver would be one.
Can I make a quick plug on that too?
Yeah.
The Go-Giver, one thing that I love too is it's a great leadership book. If you're out recruiting this year or managing people, learning to give people without expectation, just to help them in the moment, without the expectation of, hey, this is going to come back to help me. If you just give, you'll be shocked at how things really do come back tenfold.
Yeah.
And so I think if you're out there and you're like, hey, do I need to give more time to like my reps or I keep it myself? And everyone has to manage it, right? Because there is a ton of things you got to balance. But within your sphere, what you can give, if you can learn to just pay it forward to people, it comes back.
Yeah, no doubt. And I've seen that all over the place. I mean, all over the place. It's just, and the nice thing is, I think it's way more rewarding. Like giving, I don't know, giving is so much more rewarding than receiving, in my opinion. Like you feel that sad when you're doing it genuinely. If you're forcing yourself, and you might have to force yourself out the gate, but you get there. I think the other book I would say is, and correct me if I'm wrong on the title, but I want to say it's The Greatest Salesman in the World by Og Mandino.
Fire book. I just started listening to that not too long ago. I'm not even.
Yeah, it's good. And it's a short read too. Both of those are pretty short reads. They're not like 500 pages. They're like probably 100, maybe 150 pages. But they're just, I don't know, like it's good, just good basic principles. I think they're, and sales it's relationships, especially once you get on to like larger, I mean, door to door and pest control it can feel pretty transactional because it's a quick sale. It doesn't have to feel transactional. I mean, I remember this is another thing, like for me, some sales took me 35 minutes. But if I'm ending the day with 6 sales and they each took me 35 minutes, but now I have rapport with someone and I would get, and you hated this, but I would get so many phone sales.
I forgot about phone sales, Ben.
I would get a lot, dude. I would get people that would call me all the time. And some of them, I'm like on their porch for 20 minutes and I just build rapport and they'd call me that night and be like, hey, like, let's get set up. I'm like, great.
Well, and mining referrals is a really important thing, and however you want to do it. And I honestly, I love that you were still doing that. We had disagreements on like which way you do that, but like at the end of the day, deals were closed. We both made some great money, and we came back from the summer. But I think, like the habit of mining referrals or using the momentum that you already have captured is really important. And everyone can find a different way of doing that. I think in this job, a big way to do that is like asking people at the end of sales, like, hey, can you connect me to anybody else? I always loved like having like the customer put me in a group chat with someone else from the neighborhood. Yeah,
especially those gated neighborhoods where you can't get in, like you don't have, but there's so much rapport in there, man. Like if Kathy's referring you to her friend and she feels confident in you, dude, the friend is already going to have a layer of confidence that oftentimes you can't build on a doorstep.
Yes.
Like it's hard. So taking that, it goes a long way.
1,000%. Well, cool. And I cut you off on that. Was there any other books? Or just those two?
I mean, there's other books that I've read, but like, I would say for me, those are two big ones that I go back and I relook at principles from or takeaways or notes that I have. And I would say, I mean, they're not books that I see a lot of people recommending or super publicized out there. So I check them out for sure.
I love it. No, those are great. Those are great books. So now a lot of times when like we're recruiting people, we're talking about how sales can benefit their personal life. And you've leveled up in a lot of ways. You got married. I passed a little bit. It's been a while now. It's been 2 years.
Yeah.
2 years. Became a father.
Yeah.
So like, how have you seen sales help your like personal life? You're like, oh, there is some implications that like this like really did positively affect like how I take care of like my personal affairs.
Yeah. I mean, I think when you're doing sales the right way, you develop relationship and personal skills that you don't really come by anywhere else. They're not really taught in school. They're not taught in I mean, you can learn principles in books, but really like you need reps. And just understanding like how to read a person or how to read the room or how to respond or how to, bite your tongue sometimes. Like there's a lot of things, like relationships are never, like they're never super black and white. Like everyone is so different, and not just, I mean, obviously not just in sales, right? But outside of sales. And this is where, for me, going into real estate, especially commercial real estate, I'm working on a deal right now. It's a pretty big deal. And we've been working on it for 6 months. Like it's something where we're keeping people at the table. We're managing emotions on both sides. We're problem solving all the time because, when something comes up, a lot of times, whether buyer or seller, we're representing the seller on this one, but buyer's coming unrepresented. So we're doing a lot on that side too. Just like mediating, dude. I'm like a therapist half the time of like, hey, like I know that upset you. Like I know that's frustrating, but like remember the bigger picture here, right? Like this is a $40 million deal. Like let's not blow it up over a $200 line item, Yeah. And being able to understand those personalities and perspectives and kind of bridge a gap there, it's a skill that there are always going to be jobs and people willing to pay for that, because most people don't ever figure it out. Most people are just kind of like, this is who I am and this is who they are. And it is what it is. And it's like, okay, look, we have a common goal. Like, let's remember the common goal. But I mean, and in relationships, right, as with Ellen now and with Berkeley and like just at home, like probably one of the biggest things it's that I've learned is like how to not react to stuff, like different personalities and people, like you have a tendency to react in a certain way to who you are or who your personality is. Yep. And sometimes if you react in a certain manner with the other personality type, like it can be super bad. And so it's just like, okay, let me process the information, understand where a person's coming from. It makes such a big difference. And your life, like you see opportunities that wouldn't be there without being able to understand that.
And one thing I think that really tied in nicely to like this space, and I love that answer, is it's learning sales is helping you see the bigger picture, like overall. Like when you go into like summer sales, for example, in this job, like you don't get paid all your money up front. It's paid over time. But like sometimes when you're out, it's hot, it's sweaty. You're like, I need more, or I don't know if I should be here. You get really emotional. But like what I think after you do a couple summers too, I've even seen it in guys, the quicker you can learn to think like a third, fourth, fifth, 6-year rep, or like someone that's thinking in terms of decades rather than months, you're going to be so much more successful.
For sure. Yeah, you got to get past the initial reaction, because I mean, you could dial it down to a day too, right? Like a door, like you could have a door that sets you off and then it puts you out of a good state of mind for the next 10 doors. Now I'm not going to be able to perform. So
what did you learn? What did you learn to do in those situations? Because when you start out, everyone gets freaks out. They're like, oh, but like let's say I'm a new rep, someone attacks you in the neighborhood. They're like, get out of here, or I'm gonna call the cops, or like what were some things? Really does affect like your performance out there to like a crazy level, like what you're eating, or what's going on with your relationships, what's going on with so many just different little things outside of it. Really does impact it. Some of the
most capable and highest performing salespeople I've seen are people that like you think like, oh, they're probably just doing bajillion hours and they're doing this, but no, they're just really, really good. And when they are in a certain like sphere, they're there and then they move on.
Yeah. And that's big in every aspect of life, right? That's a skill, again, one of those skills that you can pick up that will carry on through the rest of your life, and something that sometimes I get complacent with, but it seems like every few months I'm trying to reset myself with like time blocking. And sales, I mean, if you're out there checking Snapchat between every other door, like you're not dialed. You're not. And even if it's like, okay, to that same point, right? If I know like I need to check Instagram or I need to check, like if I have that compulsion to do that, like set it up for yourself. Like I'm going to go hit 20 doors, or I'm going to go hit an hour, and then I'm going to spend 2 minutes on it. But like separate those so that when you're knocking, you're not getting distracted. You're not getting unfocused. And then you know that you have that set aside, like, okay, it's there, it's not that far away. Cause that's the same with it, like texting people back, like responding. Cause I mean, our phones buzz us. They interrupt us all day long. Yeah. And it's like, dude, set it on do not disturb for an hour, focus for an hour, and you'll be amazed at like the mental space and then what you're able to accomplish.
Well, and I also think too, just like the practice, we always would do this, but we sometimes as a team, we would always pull out like, hey, what's your screen time? Like, what are we looking at? Like, and if you're in an office right now and you're like, hey, like I want to figure out how to like improve my summer, if you pull up your phone, you look at your screen time, I would take it to the person that's performing the highest and compare it.
Yeah.
Because you're going to see some stark differences and whatever they're viewing, like if you add those in, you're going to be shocked at how like quickly you increase sales.
Yeah. No, I love that. That's a good thing to do. And then find an accountability partner with it. Dude, put $100 on the line. Put something on the line that's like, okay, like I'm gonna stick to it. Like I don't want to buy that guy Ruth's Chris this weekend, whatever it is. But
do you remember the lake jar?
Yeah.
We used to have this lake jar, and if someone wasn't like with their shoes on in the meeting, not eating food, then we would.
And this year was hard. We didn't have an office or anything, so it was like in our living room, bro. So we're like, okay, like, dude, I'm gonna bring breakfast out with me, or like I'll be in my my gym shorts with my polo on, and it was like, dude, all of a sudden, like Dawson's just like, hey, today, all you guys like piss off. Here's $10. I was like, okay.
What I loved about that year, though, that especially like that was
Houston. Yeah.
What I loved though is we all paid it. Like when we were late or when we didn't show up, there wasn't like when because that's you don't have to buy it. Like if you really want to be like oh I'm not gonna do it. But when we were all like, hey, no, like as a team, like and we made sure. I remember like if someone was late or didn't show up, we were all like, hey, no, dude, like. You owe the team $5 or like $10 or whatever it was.
Yeah.
And then like we pull it up and we divvy it out. It was typically like we drain the late jar through an incentive.
Mm-hmm.
But I think one of the things I loved about that team is like we were all committed to like, and what I like about that incentive is you're committed. Everyone's contributing to it and everyone's getting better because of it.
Sure. Yeah. And Nick, playing field, they're either going to bring people down with them or they're just going to be a distraction, right? They can't do the same things that are required and have that same mentality to achieve those same goals. So, I mean, that same note, I agree, like just aligning yourself with people. And it's not to say like everyone doesn't have to go out and do 600 accounts.
Yeah.
But for me, is my level 250? Is my level 400? What is my level that makes me focus, makes me work hard, makes me train, put in the time, and aligning that across the board.
Well, and one thing too is like when the whole team is in that zone of like, hey, we're all working, like we're all moving together. We all are Alabama. Like we're going to be, we're going to roll tide this. You like, even when you have hard things happening or bad things going on, you just overcome them quicker just because the group chat's blowing up, the the memes are getting they're flowing. Everyone's like hitting harder onto the doors.
Yeah, and it's exciting. You feel that I don't know where everyone landed that year, but it seemed like everyone I think left the summer like that was a good time. Like I did well. I'm happy. Yeah, and not quite the same. Not quite the same that second summer. I would say there were a few different people on the team that were kind of just butt draggers, dude.
There's always a couple of those.
Yeah.
But so now like obviously part of your sales career was like starting in door to door, jumped into residential real estate, and jumped into commercial. What's something you've learned in that latter half that's not in, like summer sales that you wish you would have known starting day one of like going out and knocking with me out that first summer?
I think one thing that I probably could have done a lot better at that I didn't recognize until later was just like, we kind of talked about it earlier, like that bigger picture perspective. Like sometimes it's easy to get lost in the day or the week and almost say, okay, if I'm having a crappy day and it's 6:30, 7 o'clock, like it can be easy to just say, can it? Like I'll start fresh tomorrow. I'll remotivate tomorrow, or on a week. And I think the week is for sure the most detrimental. Because a day, like, and I'm not just like, it's not okay. Like don't quit at 6 o'clock just because it's been a rough day. Like go snag a couple more, yes. Right? But on a week, man, if you're having a rough week and it's like Thursday or, whatever, like don't throw in the towel in those last couple days, because you could go and do in those 2 days like what you've done the last 10, like you can have a killer day, but it's hard and it's not easy. Like it's hard. You have to intentionally reset and refocus and say, okay, like this is how it's been, but it doesn't matter. Like this is where I'm at now. I'm going to focus on the now and control that outcome, because you can control a lot, especially in door to door. Like it's such a mental, personal thing that you can control a lot of your outcomes. And if you're just knocking to like hit doors, like, and not with an intention to close, that's where I think you lose it when you get like bogged down at a week or lose sight, at the end of the day is just, well, I'm still hitting doors. And I think, that happened to me, especially out the gate. I just be like, oh man, like rough day or rough week, but I'm like, I'm just going to keep hitting doors, but do it intentionally. And I think it makes a huge difference.
Yes, 1,000%. And intention is everything because it keeps your mind there. The minute you let your mind slip is when all of a sudden everything goes wrong. Sometimes like I'll talk to reps after they've had a bad like week or like a couple of days, and you'll notice it's like, hey, mentally you're giving so much lower just because you've accepted defeat on a lot of different things.
Yeah. And that's where if you need to, again, and this is my perspective and what I think, like, sometimes I would do is like, hey, if I need to take 10 minutes to just separate that frustration, separate that emotion, to dial in the last 2 hours of my day, like worth it for me. And other people can just, they can just go from one to the next and they've already forgotten or overcome it, whatever. Like everyone's process is a little bit different, but reset that, get back into like, yes, I can do it. Like, yes, I'm going to do it, and get out there. And then each door is it's not just a number. It's not just a door. It's not a tally or a dot on sales routes, whatever. Like, it's an opportunity for me to make money, for me to, forge this relationship. And I have, like, oddly enough, there are some people that like I knocked into that like I'm connected with on LinkedIn still. Like, and that's probably just me, where I would like be on someone's doorstep sometimes for 25 minutes and like have way more rapport than I probably needed to. But you know, like for me, that was part of, I think, what, you know, rejuvenated an afternoon or evening is like, hey, you know, I had a great connection, got to go to the bathroom in their house, like got a bottle of water.
And you need those things that make it fun. Like,
Yeah.
like I think a lot of times when people think that like the summer is this thing where you're like working hard now so you can live later. I think you can live in the summer and make it super fun. And I think the people that do that are the ones that sell the highest.
Yeah.
And so like,
Yeah.
if you can tap into that somehow of making a side game of whatever you're doing, or just kind of just, I don't know, like I just really feel like if you can figure out, well, how am I going to enjoy this moment now? It's going to be way more successful.
Yeah. Yeah. Finding that joy in the journey.
We had a lot of great stories, like when we were out selling and stuff like that. If you can pick one though to share with everybody that you're like, that was a funny moment, or like I enjoyed this on the doors.
Oh man.
Anything with the team that year, something you're like, oh, that was funny.
Dude. I gotta share a couple, but they're quick. Dude, okay, one thing that happened, and I gotta freaking throw McLean under the bus again. Because he would do the same for me, and that's fine. It's how our friendship works. But the homie's in freaking washing his feet in the bathroom sink, just like, I don't know why. We shared a bathroom. It was gross, dude. I was just like, you're a freaking weirdo. Why are you doing that?
I mean, good to know they're clean though, you know.
I mean, you would think, but like just take a shower, bro. Like, I don't know. But then, no, I remember, dude, freaking 4th of July, Houston summer. Do you remember that day for me?
Yeah.
It was dumping rain, just dumping rain that whole freaking day, and it was so humid because of the rain. I mean, Houston's already humid.
Yeah.
And I don't remember why. I think Ty was out of town that week, so I was just by myself. And we're in some really good hood. Like I'd been in that neighborhood for the few days before, and I really liked it. And I literally knocked like 7 doors, and I sold 5 accounts that day. And like part of me looks back, I'm like, man, what if I knocked like 20 doors? Would I have sold like 18 accounts? But like I was like, dude, I would pull in front of a house and I would get out of my car and go knock it, and then like come back to my car and drive to the next house, and like or the next one that I wanted to hit. And it was wild, dude. I seriously knocked like 7 doors and sold 5 that day.
That's incredible. And like someone hearing that, they're like, oh, dude, I found 100 today and I did it. But like, I think there's so many things that you naturally instinctively knew how to do to kind of like build rapport, and also and you really knew where to pick them. Like I think that was where like something
Yeah.
you're really really good at. So
Yeah.
if you're listening to this and you're hearing like, dude, I want to go 5 for 7. Like I freaking want to. I want to be bad. I want to be bad close to 1,000. I feel like learning that side of the game of how to put yourself in the right situation with the right kind of customer is super super big.
Yeah.
And also like staying in other areas where like there's going to be high cancellations. You can typically see it like in years past. You'll see a bunch of black stars, or like you pull up Zillow and you see the home values. If it's
Yep.
some point, even if you can close them, a lot of times the next day they're not showing up, or on the back end they're not showing up.
Yeah. Yeah. Which it's like, don't waste the time. Like, don't wait. And most of the time, like, I mean, most of the time you're whoever's assigning you hood's not going to be like, they'll see it too. They're not going to want to put you in a position where you're going to fail, because, and everyone's going to, like, I was much more inclined for like those bigger lots, those, you know, more country suburb neighborhoods. Like I sold way better there than in like the track home neighborhoods where they were all right next to each other. But other people kill it in those, and they can hit twice as many doors because there's, you know, 5 doors to every one that I have. But find what you're inclined towards, and a lot of that's just personality.
Yeah.
You know.
And I also think too, it's time of day. Sometimes.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's like, oh, there is certain areas that I really want to be in around like the morning because they're more older demographic there.
Mm-hmm.
And at the end of the day, like a lot of times people get lost indoors when you got to get lost in how to find people.
Yeah. Yeah.
So cool. Well, Ed, Spence, I really enjoyed this pod. I hope a lot of people get out there and watch it. It's been really fun having you on.
There's a video on YouTube actually. I think if it's, we'll
You search PRD. We'll link it.
we'll link it up. But we appreciate Spence for that, and we almost broke the internet. So thank you, Spence. Thanks for being on. Great pod.
Yeah, dude, that was fun. This better be the most watched. So I'll be keeping tabs on it.
I love it.